Hi, my name is Amara Graham, Developer Advocate at Kestra. Today, I want to walk you through 4 flows of increasing complexity to talk through some of the items that you might see or use in your workflows. This video idea came to me when I was reading through our docs and listening to some of our videos and realized that we talk a lot about how everything has an ID and a type, for example. But when we show you something like this, which is our boilerplate or our Hello World example that you get when you create a new flow from scratch, and when we say that, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. In this case, we have an ID for our flow, a namespace, a place where our flow is located. And then we have a set of tasks, which is really just one task. And so, yes, it does have an ID and a type, but what does this really mean? And I think we can explain that as we talk through flows that are a little bit more complex and have a little more interesting components. So this next one is a flow that I created when I started at Kestra. So this gave me an opportunity to try some different components, try out some of our plugins, and really kind of understand what I could do with Kestra. So right off the bat, you see I've got a trigger up at the top. In some of our examples, you may see our triggers towards the bottom. You can put them wherever you want. For me, I like to have them up at the top so I can see exactly how this flow starts and runs, kind of similar to what we have in our topology here. This big green box that says triggers, this is how our flow starts. So in this case, it's a schedule trigger. We have a cron expression that basically says, I want to run this 4 p.m. Fridays in Austin, where I'm located. But it also gave me the opportunity to work with conditions to check and make sure that it's not a public holiday. In the US, we don't have many public holidays that fall on a Friday, so this is a little bit trivial of an example, but again, it gave me the opportunity to work with conditions and see how that might look. So let's get into tasks. Um, you can see here, there's a number of different tasks. You can also see them represented in the topology. I know that it's a little bit small, but in our tasks here, we start to use things like our expression syntax. So this first one here, when we say, oh, wrap your expression in curly brackets, what could that look like? Let me talk through a couple of examples. So in this case, I want to get a list of GitHub issues, and I want to do it basically over the course of the work week. So I say this flow is going to run on Friday. I want to grab today's date, which is likely going to be Friday when it runs. I want to go 5 days in the past to capture my 5-day work week. And then I want to format that date timestamp in a way that the API expects. So I do a little bit of formatting and filtering with this expression. Just below that, you can see I reference a secret, which is pretty easy to understand. I have the name of my secret referenced there, and again, wrapped in curly brackets. I start to do more interesting things down here with outputs. So if you remember, this ID up here was get issues. I want to reference the output of that task. And in particular, I want to reference the response body from my API to then do something with it. Or in this case, use a ForEach to walk through each of the items or each of the issues that I got in that response. So with that, we can do, again, some interesting things with our expression syntax here. We can use task run, which gets us what run we're in within that for each. So whatever iteration we're in. In this case, we want to see the value or use the value. And down here, you can see we want to see what number iteration are we in and grab a count for that. So we can do some interesting things here with expressions. Again, this is kind of relatively basic, but it gives you examples, and it gives you examples in a way that's a little bit more than just what we've got explicitly put in our documentation. I do things similar in this second set of tasks to go through my calendar, so you can kind of walk through that as well. And then similar to our secrets here, we've got our KV store values, just basically just a way for me to set and reference a value throughout my flow and not have to pass it from task to task in like an output, as an example. So as I've been scrolling here, I haven't mentioned it, but hopefully you've kind of caught on to the fact that like our trigger has an ID and a type, our tasks have IDs and types, and you can kind of start to understand why we say this. So our ID is going to be what we reference for that particular task. If we want to do something like grab the outputs, we need to get the get issues ID and make sure we reference that. And then with our type, we want to tell Kestra what we want to do with that particular task or that particular component, so that it knows what we want to do with that. Let's move on to a little bit more complexity. And you probably look at this and say, well, the topology doesn't look that much more complex. It looks kind of nice and neat and tidy. But in this particular example, we can talk through some different things that we haven't seen yet. So in our task list here, we have a flowable task, a parallel. And what this is going to do is execute these three tasks here that you can see on my screen, or you can see referenced in this box. It's going to run them in parallel. So it's not waiting for one to finish before the next one starts. They're all happening at once. The other thing that I like about this example is the properties here listed for each of the tasks are not entirely complete. So if I scroll to the bottom, and this is again another case, just like the triggers example, where you can have these at the top if you wanted, but our plugin defaults here have the additional required properties for those ones that we had closer to the top of our flow. So all of the URLs in this case are going to be the same thing with the username and password. And this gives us the ability to have this in one place. So if I needed to change, for example, the URL, I only need to change it in one place rather than having it up here in our flow code and having to change it 3 times. Same thing with our username and password. I also really like the plugin defaults because it cleans up what I have in my flow. So the next flow that I'm going to show you is even more complex, even longer. But if I were to go and add our username, our password, our URL 3 times to these 3 different tasks, it's going to increase the length of our flow code. It's going to decrease the readability because we have those extra characters or those extra values in there. And so I think it's nice from that aspect too. So you have the maintainability, you change it in one place if you need to, and you have the readability. You don't have it repeated across these 3 tasks. The last thing with this example that I wanted to mention is this working directory. This also wraps your tasks in a nice little box to show, where or what work is happening within that working directory. This makes a lot of sense if you're cloning a repository and you want to work with those files from that repository across a number of tasks. So rather than passing outputs through your tasks, which might be a bit resource intensive depending on the size of those files, you can do it all within the same working directory. So in this case, you can see all of these tasks are related to the same working directory that you've cloned at the start. Moving on, we have this flow, which, like I mentioned, it's definitely increased in complexity. It's increased in size. I know it's a bit of an eye chart here. We'll zoom when I'm referencing items in the topology specifically, but I'll kind of center it for now. So I really like this example because it's more complex, but also it demonstrates some different things that you might want to do because you have a flow that is more complex. So in this case, you can see we've got a description that's associated with our flow itself. I really like this because, again, when you have something like this where your topology is so big you can't quite see it, you can't really visualize exactly what this is doing, that description helps you out tremendously. You can add a description to any of your components within your flow. So you can see inputs, which I'll talk about in a second, have descriptions here. You can also add them to tasks. And if you add them to tasks, they will show up with a little eye icon that you can click on to see those descriptions within your topology. The other thing that I wanted to point out here was you can use either the descriptions, which, like I said, will render within the topology if they're associated with a task, or you can use code comments. And for flows like this, where they're quite long, there's a lot going on, you may find it easier to actually read through the YAML itself. So reading through the flow code. In that case, if you have something like this, like in our Kestra UI, you get highlighting. And I think this highlighting is really important because as you're reading through, it kind of helps your brain parse what's going on. And you don't get that with the descriptions that are on the tasks themselves. So in this case, I think visually it makes it a little bit more interesting, a little bit easier for you to read, but you can use both, certainly. And we certainly see that in this example. So if I scroll back up to the top here, I kind of glossed over inputs. Now, inputs are going to make your flows more reusable and dynamic. So instead of creating an entirely new flow and hard coding the values that you need, let me show you. If you hit execute here, it brings up a nice little modal where you're able to enter the input values. So maybe your subsequent runs, you want to change these. You want to change the tenant ID, you want to change the application waves, etc. The other thing that I wanted to show you here was the different types that you can have. So for a tenant ID up here, this is just a string. So you just get a text input. This application waves is a JSON type. And then down here we have max parallel per wave. That's giving you an int. So you get this nice little UI widget that allows you to increase the value by 1. If we continue on down here, we can see our toggles. So these are Boolean values. So as you are going through your runs and you want to change these values, you can use this modal, and you get the type or the UI widget that you'd expect based on the type. So popping back out here, I guess I should also mention that these inputs have IDs and types as well. So the type is obviously going to determine what is on that UI we were just looking at, what widget renders, but then of course the ID for how we want to reference that. And I may have kind of glossed over it. You may have seen it. The inputs, again, it's that expression syntax that we talked about. You wrap them in curly brackets, you do inputs dot the ID. So just like we were looking at above, tenant ID in this case. There's a couple of other things that I wanted to touch on. We saw task run in one of our previous examples. We didn't see parent because we didn't have nested for eaches, but this is going to help you determine if you want the task run of the for each that you're currently in, or do you want the task run of the parent or other values. So if you're nesting things, I think this becomes really important to kind of see what that looks like and how to reference that. Um, Outputs, we have talked about. Again, this maybe gets a little bit more complex just because of the Pebble syntax that you're seeing there, a lot more dot dot dots. But I wanted to kind of scroll to the bottom here to find our error property or our errors block. You'll hear us refer to it as both in documentation and videos, but that's right here. So this errors property, it may not be super clear at this point, but this is what's going to catch any errors throughout our entire flow. So it's a flow level error. We can also handle errors either at the namespace level, so kind of a system flow that listens across all of our namespaces, across many flows, or we can do it at the task level. So if your particular task we want to make sure fails gracefully, we can handle it there too. In this case, it's for the entire flow. And you can see that here, or maybe you can't because it's quite small, but this red hash that goes throughout our entire flow here, this is what's representing that particular error. So if I kind of try to back out a little bit, you can see it all the way down and hanging on the outside of our topology. So this is, again, a great way to kind of fail gracefully. We want to make sure that anything that happens during this flow, we capture and we can send either to a system to notify someone or maybe a ticketing system that says, hey, there was an issue. So we want to make sure that we reference some information, like what tenant ID was the one that failed. What was the execution ID? So what exactly was the execution that failed? And then some error information so that we can clean up manually if needed, or potentially page someone, do some sort of escalation process. So I want to mention this because I think when we talk about errors, we're like, you can handle them in different ways, but I think looking at this as a blueprint is really great for kind of getting that good visualization of what's happening here. So those were the 4 flows that I wanted to talk through, and I hope you appreciate this video and this concept of, talking a little bit more about the components that you may see in a flow and how the complexity could increase. With the exception of this flow that I'm sharing on my screen, our Hello World boilerplate, which again, you can see by just creating a new flow in Kestra, our 3 flows that I demonstrated today are all available as blueprints, which will be linked in the description. So test them out. Let me know what you're building with Kestra, and let me know what other videos you'd like. Thanks.